Every presidency has advisors. Some are official, cabinet members, national security staff, chiefs of staff. These advisors operate within institutional frameworks, attend formal meetings, and leave documentary trails. Others operate in the shadows, wielding influence through personal relationships and informal channels. But what happens when a foreign adversary becomes the most influential voice in presidential decision-making? That's not a scandal. It's a constitutional crisis disguised as diplomacy. And the pattern of interactions between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin suggests exactly this kind of parallel decision-making structure has emerged. This isn't about speculation or conspiracy theories. This is about observable patterns in how decisions are made, who is consulted before those decisions, and whose interests those decisions ultimately serve. The evidence is public. The implications are profound. To understand this parallel presidency, we need to examine the specific instances where Putin's influence on Trump's decision-making becomes visible, the mechanisms through which that influence operates, and why this represents something fundamentally different from normal diplomatic consultation between world leaders. Start with the most recent and dramatic example. Before meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to discuss the ongoing war, Trump spoke with Putin first. Not just a brief courtesy call, but extended conversations. Trump himself acknowledged speaking with Putin for almost 2.5 hours in one call and made multiple calls on the same day, according to various reports. Think about the sequence carefully. The President of the United States is about to meet with the leader of a country under invasion by Russia. The stated purpose is to discuss potential peace negotiations and American support for Ukraine's defense. Before that meeting, Trump calls the leader of the invading country for extensive consultation. This isn't normal diplomatic protocol. When American presidents meet with allies under threat, they don't typically call the threatening power first to coordinate messaging. That would be, at minimum, a profound breach of trust with the ally. At maximum, it suggests the American president is coordinating with the adversary rather than the ally. But the sequence becomes even more telling when we examine what happened during and after the Zelensky meeting. Trump held the meeting not in the White House, but at Mar-a-Lago, his private club. He held it in a dining room, not a formal diplomatic setting. He didn't have American officials greet Zelensky at the airport, a basic diplomatic courtesy that signals respect and alliance commitment. During the meeting itself, Trump echoed Russian talking points with remarkable precision. He said Putin really wants to help Ukraine and that Russia wants to see Ukraine succeed. These are virtually identical to statements Putin had made in previous propaganda appearances. Trump claimed that a temporary ceasefire would prolong the war. Again, this was the exact position Russian officials had articulated just days earlier. Trump stated that some Ukrainian territory has already been taken and that Zelensky should make a deal now before more is lost. This mirrors Russian diplomatic pressure points almost exactly. Trump even said he understands Putin's position on why Russia won't agree to a ceasefire, explaining Putin's logic sympathetically to reporters. Then, after the Zelensky meeting, Trump called Putin again. He was briefing Putin on the meeting. Think about what that means. The American president meets with an ally under invasion, then immediately calls the invading country's leader to report on what was discussed. According to Russian readouts of these conversations, which Trump has never contradicted, Putin and Trump agreed that a temporary ceasefire would prolong the conflict. The readouts stated that Trump listened carefully to Russia's assessment of prospects for reaching an agreement. They described Trump speaking of impressive prospects of U.S. economic cooperation with Russia if the conflict ends. This is a pattern, not an isolated incident. But to understand its significance, we need to examine how it fits into a longer history of Trump-Putin interactions that suggest a consultative relationship fundamentally different from normal diplomatic channels. Go back to the 2016 campaign. Trump publicly said, "Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing." This was treated as a joke or political rhetoric. But later that same day, Russian military intelligence began targeting Hillary Clinton's personal office for the first time, according to Mueller investigation findings. During the campaign, Trump's foreign policy positions aligned remarkably consistently with Russian interests. He questioned NATO's value and suggested he might not honor Article 5 defense commitments. He praised Putin personally and suggested better U.S.-Russia relations. He was skeptical of American intelligence assessments regarding Russian activities. After becoming president, Trump's first major foreign policy controversy involved sharing classified intelligence with Russian officials in the Oval Office, intelligence that reportedly compromised an Israeli intelligence source. The information wasn't shared through proper intelligence channels, but in a private meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Then came the Helsinki summit in 2018, perhaps the most dramatic public display of Trump's deference to Putin. The summit itself was controversial from the start. Trump insisted on a private, one-on-one meeting with Putin with only translators present, no American note-takers or advisors. The content of that private meeting remains unknown, which itself violates normal protocols for presidential meetings with foreign leaders. But what happened at the public press conference afterward shocked even Trump's supporters. Standing next to Putin, Trump was asked whether he believed American intelligence agencies or Putin's denials regarding Russian interference in the 2016 election. This should have been straightforward, an American president supporting American intelligence over a foreign adversary's denials. Trump's response, President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. He went on to say, I don't see any reason why it would be Russia that interfered, appearing to accept Putin's denial over his own intelligence community's unanimous assessment. He suggested that maybe other people or someone else interfered, echoing a conspiracy theory Putin had promoted. The reaction was immediate and bipartisan. Republican Senator John McCain called it one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president in memory. Republican Senator Jeff Flake said, I never thought I would see the day when our American president would stand on the stage with the Russian president and place blame on the United States for Russian aggression. This is shameful. Even Fox News hosts expressed shock. Neil Cavuto said he was disgusted and that Trump's comments were disgusting. The backlash was so severe that Trump held a cleanup press conference the next day, claiming he misspoke and meant to say wouldn't instead of would, that he didn't see why it wouldn't be Russia. But this explanation was transparently false. His full comments in Helsinki weren't just about one word. They were extended remarks accepting Putin's framing throughout. The misspoke excuse couldn't explain why Trump had praised Putin's powerful denial or why he suggested other countries might be responsible. What the Helsinki summit revealed was Trump's instinctive deference to Putin in moments of choice. When forced to pick between American intelligence agencies and Putin, Trump picked Putin. When given opportunity to criticize Russian interference, Trump defended Russia. When standing next to Putin on a global stage, Trump treated him as a partner rather than an adversary. Trump has spoken about his communications with Putin in revealing ways. During the recent press conference with Zelensky, Trump said, "Don't forget, we went through the Russia hoax together, and he'd call me, I'd call him. I'd say, can you believe the stuff that they're making up? And it turned out we were right." This describes private phone calls between Trump and Putin specifically about domestic American investigations into Russian activities. Trump and Putin were communicating privately to discuss, and presumably coordinate responses to, investigations into Russian interference. Trump describes this as if it's normal, even appropriate. It's neither. These weren't calls made through official State Department channels with proper record-keeping. Trump references them casually as personal conversations. He describes a relationship where he and Putin commiserated about investigations, shared frustrations about critics, and reinforced each other's narratives. The content of what Trump says about Russia and Putin is consistently at odds with what American intelligence agencies assess and what American allies observe. Every American intelligence agency concluded Russia interfered in the 2016 election. Trump has repeatedly questioned or denied this. American intelligence assesses Russia as a significant threat to NATO allies. Trump has questioned NATO's value and suggested Russia isn't threatening. American intelligence concluded Russia was offering bounties for killing American soldiers in Afghanistan. Trump dismissed these reports and never raised the issue with Putin. American intelligence agencies assess that Putin operates a kleptocracy and authoritarian regime that murders dissidents. Trump praises Putin as a strong leader and suggests he's more trustworthy than American officials. This consistent pattern, Trump siding with Putin's version of events over American intelligence assessments, suggests something beyond normal skepticism or alternative analysis. It suggests Trump's primary information source and trusted advisor on these issues is Putin himself. Consider the decision-making process. Normal presidential decisions on foreign policy involve consultation with the National Security Council, State Department, Defense Department, and intelligence agencies. These consultations are documented. Multiple perspectives are presented. Options are analyzed. Decisions are made within an institutional framework designed to serve American interests. But Trump's Russia-related decisions often bypass these processes entirely. He makes statements that surprise his own advisors. He takes positions that contradict recommendations from national security staff. He makes commitments to Putin that weren't discussed with relevant agencies beforehand. This suggests a parallel decision-making process. The official process operates through formal channels, but Trump's actual decisions are influenced by a separate, informal channel, his direct communications with Putin. The formal advisors learn what Trump has decided. They don't participate in deciding. The constitutional implications are profound. The president has broad authority over foreign policy. But that authority assumes the president is acting in American interests, informed by American advisors accountable to American institutions. When a president is primarily consulting with a foreign leader whose interests directly conflict with American interests, the constitutional framework breaks down. Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president power to make treaties, appoint ambassadors, and serve as commander-in-chief. But these powers exist within a system of checks and balances. The Senate confirms appointees. Treaties require Senate ratification. Congress controls funding. These checks assume the president is trying to advance American interests, even when there's disagreement about how to do so. But what happens when the president is advancing another country's interests? The constitutional framework doesn't contemplate this clearly because it was considered unthinkable. The founders worried about foreign influence but assumed it would be resisted by patriotic officials, not embraced by the president himself. Some might argue that Trump is simply pursuing his own vision of American interests, which happens to align with Putin's positions. This interpretation is possible but requires believing several unlikely things simultaneously. It requires believing Trump's skepticism about Russian interference, despite unanimous intelligence agency conclusions, reflects independent analysis rather than accepting Putin's denials. It requires believing Trump's questioning of NATO serves American interests, despite NATO being central to American security policy for 75 years. It requires believing Trump's soft approach to Russian aggression represents strategic wisdom rather than deference to Putin. More plausibly, Trump has developed a relationship with Putin, where Putin's perspective shapes Trump's understanding of events and interests. This doesn't require conscious betrayal or formal coordination. It simply requires Trump trusting Putin's account of things, valuing Putin's approval, and incorporating Putin's preferences into his decision-making. This is how influence works. Influence doesn't require control or commands. It requires shaping someone's information environment so they reach the conclusions you want them to reach, thinking they're making independent decisions. If Putin is Trump's primary source of information about Russia, Ukraine, NATO, and European security, and the evidence suggests he is, then Putin can shape Trump's understanding of these issues. Trump will make decisions based on that understanding, believing he's acting on facts when he's actually acting on Putin's carefully curated version of facts. This is a sophisticated form of influence that intelligence agencies call information dominance. By becoming someone's trusted information source, you control their reality. They don't need to know they're being influenced. In fact, the influence works better when they don't realize it. They think they're making independent judgments based on reliable information. They don't recognize that the information itself has been selected and framed to lead them to predetermined conclusions. Putin is a former KGB officer. This is exactly the kind of influence operation the KGB specialized in during the Cold War. The KGB didn't primarily use blackmail or coercion. Those create resentment and resistance. The KGB preferred to cultivate relationships, provide information that served Soviet interests, and let targets reach their own conclusions that happened to align with Soviet objectives. Modern Russian intelligence inherited these techniques. They understand that the most effective influence is invisible. The target doesn't feel manipulated or controlled. They feel like they're making informed, independent decisions. The skill is in making sure the information environment leads them to the right conclusions. Trump's personality makes him particularly vulnerable to this approach. He distrusts institutions and expertise. He values personal relationships and loyalty. He prefers information from people who affirm him rather than challenge him. Putin can provide all of this: personal attention, affirmation of Trump's instincts, information framed to confirm Trump's preferences. Meanwhile, American intelligence officials and advisors who tell Trump things that contradict his preferences or Putin's narratives get labeled as part of the deep state or dismissed as politically motivated. This creates a perfect environment for Putin's influence to operate. Trump actively rejects information from American sources while actively seeking it from Putin. The mechanism is reinforced by Trump's personal psychology. Trump values loyalty and punishes perceived disloyalty. American intelligence officials who contradicted Trump's Russia narratives were fired or marginalized. Putin, in contrast, consistently tells Trump what Trump wants to hear: that Trump is a strong leader, that criticisms of Trump are unfair, that Trump's instincts are correct. This creates a dynamic where Trump receives negative feedback from American advisors and positive reinforcement from Putin. Human psychology is predictable. People tend to trust those who affirm them and distrust those who challenge them. Trump's psychology makes him particularly susceptible to this dynamic. The national security implications are severe. If Putin has influence over Trump's decision-making, he can advance Russian interests through American policy. He can learn American negotiating positions before meetings. He can shape American responses to Russian actions. He can divide America from its allies by having Trump take positions that allies find unacceptable. Consider Ukraine specifically. Russia invaded Ukraine and seeks to control Ukrainian territory and politics. American interests favor Ukrainian sovereignty and resistance to Russian territorial conquest. These interests are directly opposed. But if Trump consults Putin before meeting Zelensky, Putin can frame the situation for Trump, explaining why Ukraine should make territorial concessions, why NATO support is counterproductive, why Russia's position is reasonable. Trump then goes into the Zelensky meeting with his understanding already shaped by Russian framing. The specific sequence matters enormously. According to reports and Trump's own statements, Trump spoke with Putin for multiple hours before the Zelensky meeting. In those conversations, Putin could present Russian intelligence assessments of the military situation, assessments designed to suggest Russia is winning and Ukraine should negotiate from weakness. Trump would hear these as intelligence rather than propaganda. Explain why a ceasefire would prolong the conflict. The bizarre Orwellian logic that stopping fighting somehow causes more fighting. Trump repeated this logic almost verbatim to reporters, suggesting he absorbed Putin's framing completely, emphasize the territories Russia has already taken, and suggest more will be lost soon, creating urgency for Ukraine to accept terms now. Trump made exactly this argument to Zelensky, claimed that Russia actually wants to help Ukraine and sees Ukrainian success as beneficial to Russian interests, perhaps the most audacious piece of framing, but one Trump also repeated publicly. By the time Trump sits down with Zelensky, His understanding of the situation has been shaped by hours of Putin's perspective. Zelensky faces an American president who has been essentially pre-briefed by Russia on why Ukraine should surrender. This isn't negotiation, it's a trap. The Ukrainian position has been undermined before discussions even begin. Then, after the meeting, Trump calls Putin again to report on what happened. This completes the circle. Putin shaped Trump's approach going in, then receives a readout coming out. Putin knows what Zelensky said, what concerns were raised, what Ukrainian thinking is. This information advantage is enormous in any subsequent negotiations. American allies face a related problem. If they share intelligence with the United States, could it reach Russia through Trump's communications with Putin? If they coordinate strategy with the United States, will Russia learn their positions? Trust in American alliance leadership depends on believing the American president won't share allied secrets with adversaries. Trump's pattern of behavior creates reasonable doubt about this. His sharing of Israeli intelligence with Russian officials in 2016 demonstrated willingness to compromise ally secrets. His consultations with Putin before and after meetings with allies suggest information flows both directions. The Republican Party's transformation on Russia reflects Trump's influence. Before Trump, Republicans were consistently hawkish on Russia, viewing it as a geopolitical adversary. Trump changed this. Now, significant portions of the Republican Party question Ukraine's support and adopt skeptical positions toward NATO. This isn't because underlying philosophy changed. It's because Trump's positions changed Republican positions, demonstrating how Putin's influence on Trump cascades into influence over Republican foreign policy broadly. The media's role in normalizing this deserves examination. Trump's relationship with Putin has been extensively covered, but often framed as political controversy rather than structural threat. Trump says controversial things about Russia becomes the story, rather than American president consults foreign adversary on decisions affecting that adversary. This framing matters because treating something as controversy suggests two legitimate sides disagreeing, when there aren't two legitimate sides to whether the president should consult adversaries on policy affecting those adversaries. Historical parallels are imperfect but instructive. When Henry Kissinger conducted secret diplomacy with China and Vietnam, he was pursuing American interests through unconventional channels. The secrecy was controversial, but the objective was clearly advancing American geopolitical position. Trump's Putin consultations are different. The secrecy isn't in service of American interests. It's concealing whose interests are being served. The consultations aren't backstopping official policy. They're creating policy that contradicts official American positions. A closer parallel might be Rasputin's influence over Tsar Nicholas II in late imperial Russia. Rasputin held no official position but wielded enormous influence over the Tsar's decisions through personal relationship and psychological manipulation. Official advisors were bypassed. The Tsar made decisions based on Rasputin's counsel that often contradicted his ministers' recommendations. The dynamic worked because Rasputin provided something the Tsar needed psychologically: certainty, affirmation, and seemingly miraculous interventions. The Tsarina especially believed Rasputin had power to heal their hemophiliac son. This personal connection gave Rasputin access and influence that no official advisor could match. Ministers would present carefully reasoned recommendations. Rasputin would tell the Tsar what he wanted to hear. The Tsar increasingly chose Rasputin's counsel. Official channels became irrelevant because the real decisions were made in private consultations with Rasputin. The results were catastrophic for Russia. Incompetent officials were appointed because Rasputin recommended them. Competent officials were dismissed because they opposed Rasputin. Military strategy was influenced by Rasputin's advice despite his having no military knowledge. The gap between official government and actual decision-making grew wider until the system collapsed. The parallel isn't exact. Putin is a geopolitical adversary with strategic interests, not a mystic with delusions. But the structural dynamic is remarkably similar. An unofficial advisor wielding more influence than official advisors, operating outside institutional frameworks, advancing interests that don't align with the nation's broader interests. Like Rasputin, Putin provides something Trump needs psychologically: affirmation, respect, treatment as a powerful leader. American advisors tell Trump what intelligence suggests or what American interests require. Putin tells Trump he's strong, smart, and correct. The psychological pull of that affirmation is powerful. And like the Tsar's ministers, American national security officials find their recommendations sidelined when they conflict with what Trump learned from Putin. The formal processes continue. Briefings happen, papers are written, meetings are held. But the actual decisions are made based on the parallel channel to Putin. What would it take to break this pattern? Institutionally, Congress could require reporting on presidential communications with foreign leaders, creating transparency for oversight. Politically, it would require Republicans deciding Trump's Putin relationship is unacceptable, regardless of partisan loyalty. Electorally, it depends whether voters view this relationship as disqualifying. The deepest challenge is acknowledging something almost unprecedented, that a president may be compromised not through blackmail, but through relationship, trust, and influence. But evidence does accumulate. Each instance, the Helsinki summit, the phone calls before Zelensky meetings, the echoing of Russian talking points, the private calls commiserating about investigations, can be explained individually. But the pattern is what matters. And the pattern is consistent with Putin functioning as Trump's most trusted advisor on exactly those issues where Putin's interests and American interests most directly conflict. This is the parallel presidency. The official presidency operates through formal channels, with cabinet meetings and national security briefings. The parallel presidency operates through phone calls with Putin, with Trump's understanding shaped by what Putin tells him, leading to decisions that serve Russian interests, while Trump believes he's serving American interests. It's not a conspiracy in the conventional sense. It doesn't require secret agreements or treasonous intent. It just requires Trump trusting Putin more than he trusts American institutions, valuing Putin's perspective more than his official advisor's analysis, and making decisions accordingly. The question isn't whether this is happening. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what it means, and what can be done about it. And those questions don't have easy answers, because the American constitutional system wasn't designed to handle a president who views a foreign adversary as his most trusted counselor. The founders worried about foreign influence. They created systems to resist it. But they assumed the president would be the one resisting, not the one embracing it. When that assumption breaks down, the systems don't work as designed. This is the challenge America faces. Not a president who has bad foreign policy ideas, that's normal and manageable, but a president whose foreign policy ideas are shaped by consultation with the very adversary those policies should be countering. That's categorically different. And it's not clear the American system has the tools to address it while that president remains in office. The parallel presidency continues. The phone calls happen. The consultations occur. The decisions get made. And the question remains whether this will be recognized as the constitutional crisis it represents, or whether it will be normalized as just another political controversy in an era where everything is controversial and nothing is disqualifying.